Okay, so big breath. So today, podcast SilentEgo, the soul of the entrepreneur. So for all our listeners and viewers of this podcast, I am proud to state that I have one of the most interesting people on the planet right now, Christian Angermayer, who basically is really the soul of the entrepreneur, literally. He fundamentally has so much to talk about from so many different perspectives. But if I'm to summarize it, he stands for greatness of humanity, and that is for me at the heart of this conversation. So, welcome, Christian. You are basically an entrepreneur. It's very, very clear. You've got a big interest in biotech, fintech, crypto, and deep tech. And that's really coming out of Apeiron, the investment group. Is that right?
Apeiron,
Which stands for infinite energy, I believe, right?
Yes.
So it's
infinite energy, infinite soul, like sort of the infinite or core, like the soul of anything. Like there was this philosophical idea that in ancient Greece, that everything, like not just humans, but like what makes this stone, what makes a table, like what is sort of the core soul, the core inner being of everything, and was a philosopher called the Apeiron. So that's where it comes from.
fantastic.
And thank you for the super nice intro. I'm like, German's are always very bad with compliments. You sit there and you're like, what do I say now? What do I say now? But it was, very nice, very humble. And hopefully I can live up to at least parts of that introduction.
Oh, definitely, without question, Christian. I think that what you stand for, you know, in many ways, I know that you're well traveled. You've got an incredible cosmopolitan background, let me term that. With your interests in psychedelics, with your businesses, which I'll let you expand on in a second. But for me, and also longevity, and I'll tell you why that's very important to me, because I am representing, in some respects, right now, from my business interests, an age group that are now starting to reach out and think and actually put strategies in place to go beyond what was retirement. Remember that old word of the 20th century? It's now gone. And I'm really reaching out to yourself, Christian, to sort of really dig into really what the future looks like from a number of perspectives. Health and wellness, longevity, the big challenges we have right now in the mental health world as well. And where Atai and Compass and the other business interests you have. So I would like to start by saying today for me is very historical, because I'd like to think that we look back on this in 10 years' time, Christian, and say, well, did we make the history? Did we actually sort of pivot from this point and live up to what we were talking about? I think we will. And so as a kindred spirit, I'd like to just shine a light on that. And what drives you, Christian? What is this about?
Now, the broadest question of all. Well, I would, actually what I already said, like if we look back in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I think we're at the moment, in any sense, living in one of, if not the most interesting times of humanity. Because for the first time, like I would say over the next 20 years, if we take that as a range, we're gonna have the opportunity to do two things. Firstly, and we just started, like to sort of redefine the world around us, hopefully very positive way.
Mm-hmm.
Like with technology. Like, so some might say, no, but aren't we doing that since sort of the last 30 years? Yes, we do, and no, we don't, because like if you would take at the moment somebody out of the 50s and miraculously transfer them to us now, yeah, we have an iPhone, we have stuff like
Mm-hmm.
fairly, the world is still the same. Like we still, if we want to move, we go on a plane or go on a car. Like, so a person out of the 50s could sort of pretty quickly sort of get accustomed to the year 2022. Yeah, it would put on the iPhone. You know what I mean? Like, sort of there was technological innovation, but actually it was not groundbreaking. We mainly got sort of the iPhone and all the social media stuff, and we mainly got sort of a new way to sell things online, but we still buy things, like still things are delivered. We just don't go to the shop anyway. So, but what I believe is that over the next 20 years, sort of real technological innovation is coming. So yeah, from, let's say, a very banal, but from self-driving cars, maybe flying cars, meaning now we start like to go to really change the world around us. And then you will see if, like, for example, self-driving cars alone, yeah, or flying cars will change how cities are completely, because people can live more outside. Like, there's so many sort of secondary and tertiary effects of the real technological innovation which is to come. So that's sort of the world around us. And at the same time, which is actually even more exciting, yeah, we will have for the first time be able to redefine and design the world inside us, meaning sort of in our brain and mind. So psychedelics are one thing, like we're working a lot on brain-computer interface, and that's really
Yeah.
going to the core also, meaning, and that makes it obviously, or it's important to take it sort of both seriously and also like think about it from the ethical side. Yeah, but like goes to sort of the core, what it means actually to be human. But I think if we do it the right way, and then in generally that's one of my character traits, very optimistic about humanity overall. I think, coming back to your question, the next 20 years plus will be the most exciting and also the most transformative years in human history. And I want to be part of that, a small one, like sort of that's what drives me, like sort of and then details, obviously, like building companies, whatever. But in generally, I would say that it's so exciting what is happening, and I want to be a small part of sort of that sort of change and disruption.
Yeah, that's well answered, Christine. I think that what I'm experiencing, I can sort of like empathize with you, is this all shift in consciousness. I kind of, I reached out many moons ago, 20 years ago, likewise, and said, what's the next big thing? Well, it's the revolution of life. It's where technology meets humanity and takes us on the next chapter of our human existence. Meta thinking and the whole sort of stratospheric journey of how we lift human consciousness out of what was into a new realm of existence. So the forces of energy that are around that right now. And I think that comes back to what really gravitated. There's a big word there, gravity. I kind of got drew to your sort of your quest from Atai and Compass Pathways. And, this is a guy that's basically leading a force. You're not forcing a feel, you're feeling the force. It's like you've picked up on the wave and you're leading that dance, which is fantastic. And I love the word dance here because it is. Are you, but at the end of the day, sort of, I'm detecting there's a lot of society is actually appearing a little fractured in so many different ways as we sort of wrestle to the new world and sort of feel our way through this. The old psychology for me is kind of, pardon the language, is dead. And we're in this kind of like void of transition. And, we're moving into this new realm of our existence where we're harnessing technology. We're looking at it from, well, as you represent, the biological side of it, um, the therapeutics piece, which I know is quite magical. Can we just zone in on that? Because that's quite a big theme right now this month, with mental wellness being a big subject. And also, I know Psych's on this week, and there's a big subscription there for the seminar and the talks. Not a lot of people are aware, I believe, of the power of the renaissance of psychedelics. Can we just zero a little bit on that? Because I see that as an enabling factor to meet to transition to the new world. Coming at it from inside out.
Well, there are so many things. Many you said I want to touch on. Like sort of the first. Let's start with not the negative, but the risk. The big sort of one of the big problems. And you said like the world feels fractionalized or shattered. Like in a sad way, actually, we have never been more connected. So if you look at it like, I don't know, philosophically, spiritually, like a lot of people on a psychedelic trip have these moment of sort of unity with other people, or oneness with other people, and sort of the world in generally. And if you sort of, I would say, factionally, like or objectively look at actually what already has happened now, so because social media and iPhone, whatever, as I said, this already has happened, like we are connected technically to each other more than ever before. So never before in humanity, I don't know, a girl in Egypt could become Facebook friends with a boy in Iowa. Yeah. So in a good way, the world is more connected, but we are not using it properly. So interestingly, so at the moment, sort of this kind of more over connectivity has actually led to rather people feeling disconnected, because meaning in generally meaning change needs to be digested. And I think we're going through this phase where we as humans need to adjust to sort of that sort of leap we've already done, and then even more the leap we've already, or we will do over the next 10-20 years. The problem with all of that is, so Jamila, is like that unfortunately, if you look at our mind and psychology, our mind is not made for change. That's one of the big sort of problems I'm seeing, where then I come to that in a second. I think psychedelics can be one of the solutions. So change is frightening people, although it might be ultimately good for them. So always the times of big change, unfortunately, if you
Yeah.
look in history, and I'm a super history geek, always have been very turbulent, and sometimes also turbulent with negative connotation ones, because change is frightening people. My counter, or of my sort of counter example, is always the ancient Egyptians, which was, if you look at it, it was one of the, I would say it was the longest sort of, I mean, yes, they had different kingdoms, but like more or less, it was like one sort of way to live and one societal architecture, yeah, which lasted for more than 2,000 years whenever you start counting, yeah, and how long you start counting. But like it was, if you think about it, like the Egyptian Empire, if you say, let's say roughly 2,000 years, that would be if the Roman Empire would still be here today, yeah. So it's an incredibly long-lasting sort of societal construct. And at the core of that societal construct was that the world is never changing. So the opposite of what we have today, they called it Ma'at, M-A-A-T, yeah, hopefully I spell it right, yeah, is where practically change was bad, because the Egyptian idea was that the world and the structure and society, yeah, as it is God-given. So practically every innovation, every change is against sort of the natural setup. So you can argue that was not good for development, but like I bet that the people were pretty happy because they had sort of the stability in their life and knew exactly in average what to do. Like, so long story short, so I sort of, because I'm living with that, because meaning I'm sort of the sort of super fan of disruption, but I'm sort of acknowledging that sort of my work and the work of many others, while it will be there, I'm very convinced, very positive at the end, yeah, is sort of in between or on the way, causing fear, pain, whatever, mentally to people, because they just don't understand where the world is going for now, and that frightens them deeply. And I think many issues we see in the world, if you try to look sort of behind them, or why are they there, I think the explanation is sort of these sort of deep underlying fear at the moment, where the world is going. And unfortunately, then I come back to the positive. Like the last time that happened, that is sort of one not so positive analogy. Like, so that, but if you go back sort of into the time 1850 to 1910. Yeah. The interesting thing is, by the way, we still have newspapers, like they online actually. So it's very, because it's so close to us, we know all the details. So if you go and Google newspapers out of that time, you will find sort of a very close proximity to the feeling of our time. So there was these sort of enormous optimism on technology. So, for example, Jules Verne wrote all of his sci-fi books, which were in partly predicting the future, going to the moon, going on the sea. Yeah, there was the Paris World Exhibition, which was literally there to celebrate technological innovation. So the Eiffel Tower was a symbol, yeah, of sort of the technological innovation of the time. So, but actually, the people who were partying, who were positive on that, was actually the elite, because they were like, oh my god, we're gonna go to the moon, like we have now reloaded again, oh, we're gonna fly, we're gonna whatever. But what they forgot is that more than 90%, or a vast majority of people back then, have been farmers, yeah, and they sort of not actively. I would say like we shouldn't underestimate sort of the wisdom of masses. Like they might not understand every detail, but they have a good feeling. So these farmers realized somehow deep down the world will change, but in the new world there is no place for them anymore. And by the way, it was the end of the agriculture age and the beginning of the industrial age. And again, that frightens people. What do people do when they're frightened? They normally resort into easy, often wrong, but on the surface, easy solutions. And the two big, very bad, very wrong, but easy solutions that time offered was actually National Socialism and communism, which were the two evils created in that time, which then ultimately led to two world wars. Yeah. So that is sort of the not so nice dystopian view. Why? And I think it could happen again if we're. But the positive is like again. By the way, and then the world became positive. So everything the people were dreaming of actually was coming. The world became a better place. Technology was making people's lives easier, but the sort of transition period was unfortunately very painful and included two world wars. Yeah. So, and we should put a lot of emphasis on it now that not the same is happening again. That not so in 30 years, 40 years, people are saying, "Oh, Christian was right. Like the world is awesome now," but unfortunately, in the time in between, sort of we destroyed a lot. Yeah. And then coming to your sort of mentioning of psychedelics, they can be one of the solutions because I think at the end we're talking about mental health issues, like because where do mental health issues come from? And that's also an explanation. Yeah. If you look at the numbers of mental health issues, yeah, they are dramatically on the rise. And it's very hard to explain because they're not an infectious disease. It's not that they're sort of fake. So, but they look like, if you look at like why the charts look almost like an infectious disease, and they are short-term drivers like COVID. Yeah, we can talk about that. But I think the long-term driver is sort of this existential fear, trauma, change is sort of installing in people. And hence, because I deeply believe that psychedelics have the potential to heal and cure these mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and all of that, they can be the perfect antidote for sort of that fear which is taking over society.
I empathize wholeheartedly there. I think that it's an interesting point. We've mentioned the word fear quite a bit. And I think that, as we upgrade our consciousness over the next 10 years in line with the changes, I do see the sort of like the psychedelic renaissance being an enabling factor. So you've got the kind of like the voluntary side of it, which is, I want to kind of, pardon the language, but I want to change the way I think. If we look at the society scenario where we're moving from capitalism, the conventional capitalism we've all been conditioned to over the last 50 years plus, and we're moving into this. So I call it moving from fear, fight, and competition to truth, trust, and co-creation. So if we look at the kind of the creative renaissance that psychedelics actually supports in the sense of, pardon the language, but upgrade your thinking through this natural source, because it is. At the end of the day, am I right? It comes from mushrooms. Okay, so if we look at the psilocybin sort of molecule, which obviously Atai and Compass are working heavily on. Right now, you only have to sort of dig, 2 or 3 layers into sort of the research and the studies and the likes. This is, it, for me, feels like a big enabling factor. It's going to help with people's traumas around mental wellness and health and come to terms with it. So if I look at humanity and the psychological upgrade that we need to sort of emphasize, and let me just sort of explain this in a slightly different way. One of the big things that I sort of championed, like nearly 20 years ago now with the dot-com crash, when I was heavily involved with a lot of the early stage tech businesses coming to market. And then obviously there was a course correction on Wall Street and NASDAQ fell apart. And
As it is happening right now.
well, exactly. So it's back again, right? And this is why this is like, it's a rerun, okay? And, I don't want to go down too much down the investment route, but the markets, for me, there's a lot of digital gluttony going on. There's a lot of like, money going into things that okay, it's all for the greater good, but you've got supply and demand issues and all the rest of it. In a time when I believe that technology should be enabling us to be able to work less, mean more, so we can actually regenerate ourselves as humans. So instead of this, constant frazzle out there, and I know that you work incredibly hard. You're on a great mission, Christian, but a lot of people are, they're tipping over with this. They're I'm talking to a lot of people right now in my business that have got sort of anxiety issues and challenges, and would benefit hugely from, I think, going down this route to sort of help them make the sort of the acknowledgements of what is really going on in the world. I call it this conscious shift to a new place of thought, which comes back to something I once said, Christian, which is, somebody said to me, "What's the future?" I said, "The next big thing is the way you think." Yeah, that's the currency of the 21st century, the way you think and express your whatever you have. So this shift from to becoming more, how can I express it, creative, a little bit more expressed, from this fearful repression to be more expressed. At the heart of all of this, my research tells me that psychedelics is a big enabler in this area. Yeah.
Well, so again, like I'm always making notes because you're touching on so many points. I would say, let's start from the last point, like sort of this whole idea. I would say, can a psychedelic enable us to, what you said? Like, I would try to rephrase it, work less, right? I would go deeper. Like, I think psychedelics, one of the main properties which I really, really personally sort of like the most, and what I also have seen, because it's at the heart of many mental health issues, is they help you understanding what you really want in life, and on a level, yeah, that you not just understand it and know it, but then the second thing, what you also touched on, is that you then dare to live accordingly to it. Because if I would say, like, there is no right way to live. Like, for example, and there is even no, it's not a competition. It's like not, it's not who's working harder. It's also like, what is work actually? So I would say, like, yes, I would say people would say I work very hard, but I would say, meaning, and doesn't mean that I don't have bad days where, like, whatever, the tasks are not nice, but like overall, I'm doing my hobby. Yeah. Because I'm always, yeah, I remind myself, actually, literally every time I'm like feeling stressed or feeling annoyed or whatever. It's like, well, Christian, you could just stop it. I could just sell stuff, yeah, and go to an island, but I don't want to because I love what I'm doing. So for me, it's not work. So which enables me to do what other people would qualify as work hard. But for me, it's like sort of being engaged in my hobby all the time. Yeah, but other people might have another idea of what is important for them. So in that what I unfortunately realized with many people is that, and that is actually what I was always very lucky. So because my psychedelic trips, especially my first one, they confirmed a lot what I anyway knew. Because I think one of the really character traits I have, I don't know if I owe it to my parents or what, guess so, like education growing up, is that that I always was very like open to myself, like what do I want in life and not, and then was also allowing myself to sort of structure my life according to it, because I believe that's one of my big things, is like the only reason to be here is to be happy. So there's no other reason. And then once you're happy, then you can sort of align yourself with other people and sort of make them happy, but you need to be happy first. Like, you can't sort of bend yourself, yeah, into society, relations, or whatsoever. Anyway, and unfortunately, last sentence, I've seen that with many other people, though, that they either don't even know, that's the worst, what they want. Yeah, because since we're growing up, people are telling us what we should be, how we should act, what we should not do. So some people, over that sort of pressure from the outside, actually even forget what they want. And some do still know what they want, but then they are afraid to live according to it because, again, societal pressure, whatever. Yeah. And I think psychedelics are sort of freeing you for both, like they sort of making you aware what you really want, and at the same time they sort of help you, giving you the courage to live according to it. So that's to the whole whole work thing. Then a side remark to the sort of resemblance or the current sort of, I would say bust, like the current stock market turn to 2020 to the 2000.com bust. I would say, like, me, every crisis is similar and every crisis is different. Like, the good thing is that, and I was there, I started very early, so I started my career in 2019. So I was sort of in these, I had several booms and busts. Yeah. What gives me a lot of confidence, whatever, looking at Atai and the share price unfortunately went down, looking at other companies in my portfolio, the companies are really real. Like, so because, like, meaning, take Atai, like I would say Atai is trading at the moment for just a little bit more than cash in our stake in Compass, but we have, yeah, more than 9 clinical drugs which are independent from each other, because, like, mental health is a broad field, so we need multiple things. Independent late stage drugs which have the potential to really improve or even mental health or even cure mental health issues. So in any world, yeah, if we have a solution for depression, if we have a solution for anxiety, in any world, if the interest rates are 5%, 2%, or 10%, that is worth something. There is no way this is worth nothing. Yeah. So because the product is real. And the same I see, by the way, though, with many tech businesses. While back in 2000, the frenzy was really on the fundamental part. I would say maybe over the last 2 years we have to acknowledge that there was a too much optimism on valuations, but actually I believe, meaning at least if I look in our portfolio, investors and founders have been very diligent in building great companies. So it's what sort of gives me calm is, like, we're seeing an adjustment of valuations. By the way, I do think even that is exaggerated. So I think that's a great buying opportunity. But we didn't see, thanks God, an exaggeration of fundamentals. The companies are doing really good, if that makes sense. And that was different in 2000. There was a lot of shit back then, which had no reason to exist.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So just tracking back to the passion of why you are where you are, I can echo this, is all around love. Okay, so that word love, if I look at, what people are looking for is to express their love. You're doing it with the way you're doing, you're in a kind of a very much, you're not working, as you say. It's basically all about harnessing the energy, the thrive, the floor, the flourish, the grow. It's that sort of real sort of fluid expression of what you love, and you are involved with things that are basically, this is where I like the human piece, is because it's all about the next, it's enabling people to reach a new state of themselves, if that makes sense. And there isn't one way, but there is a better expressed way. And I think that's a great cause. So, the psychedelic renaissance, I see this as so for example, I've invested, Christian, in personally in your businesses. And I did it for this reason. I believe. Forget the share price for me. It was, I believe in the cause. So my investment was, yes, at some point there will be a superb return. I'm sure there will be, but that's not what it's all about. It's about, this is a greater good piece for me. That's a personal judgment. It's not for everybody, but equally, I think it was. But if I look at that momentum, and how it's that renaissance with your sort of leadership on the global stage, I think it's cool. It really is cool, because you are genuinely bringing it to people's attention, and you're basically giving them the intelligence and information, unbiased in many ways. But you're coming at it, as the sage would say, or the Zen would say, from profound insights. This is not a scheme. This is reality as I see it. Yeah, which is really cool. The other thing, just to support this.
By the way, there was
So
what Elon Musk said,
yeah,
like, sorry, to like, but what I think this was the quote from Elon Musk some days ago, where he said, "I think you make very good returns if you invest in what you believe in, yeah, and then stick to it, because in that case that the product what we're developing is a valuable one, yeah,
yes,
and yet there are market fluctuations." Then what I said before, like, the companies are real, yeah, and again using Atai as an example, but I see that throughout actually the venture world. Yeah, these are products which sort of make people happy, make people better, like serve a purpose, so they will survive. Yeah, and I think that's a very smart way to invest.
Definitely. And now switching into sort of Rejuveron, your business. The longevity subject for me is a real subject, and not a lot of people are aware. I'm, part of this exercise that we're in right now is to make people aware that, for modern executives as an example, but for people that are not considering retirement, that longevity, which my business Agility Life is heavily involved with right now, taking the average sort of 55-year-old out of the work environment to kind of express their value in different ways for the next 15, 20 years. This is becoming a common request. Okay, so people are bypassing conventional retirement, which is the hangover of the 20th century. People have all of a sudden arrived and said, you know what? I'm in a good state of mind. I'm financially part resilient. I don't need to knock off. But what I do need to do is actually keep my physiology in good shape. I need to sort of look after, health, wellness. I call it the new wealth, which is WHEALTH, wealth, which is a combination of where money meets the human from a physical wellness perspective. And yes, it does weave in the psychedelics piece, because this is a whole new consciousness of, being able to sort of perform, operate, and share your wisdom. There's a big word, wisdom, into a new realm of your existence. So what am I really saying? I'm saying the average 50 to 60-year-old now is actually going through a real cycle of reinvention and is actually starting to reach out. And the longevity piece for me is heart-centric. It's an area that at this stage of my professional career, I'm reaching out to. I'm all over it. I'm supplementing with it. I want to live till I'm 150, and I've just had a new daughter, literally 6 weeks ago, Jemima. I got a thank you. I've got my little boy Teddy. He's 5. My little Rupert is 3. But I'm testimony that you can start children any stage of your life, right? Doesn't have to be then. You can do it later. But what I'm really trying to get to, Christian, is people being aware that one of the biggest movements is coming is longevity and how we look at ourselves from, once again, inside out. So I'd love to just illuminate that with where you are.
Well, so there are two things. Let's start with what we already have, because you said it, like sort of already now, the average life expectancy is over 80 for men and women. Yeah, I mean, it depends on the country, but let's say over 80. That means, as you say, if you're 55 now, if you're 65 now, yeah, you still have sort of 20, 30 actually good years, yeah, ahead of you. So in any way, I come into Rejuveron, like to the real quest to sort of push that in a second, but like already now, yeah, we have to rethink the whole concept, if it all makes sense, of retirement. And we shouldn't remind us by, if I'm not historically mistaken, this whole idea of retirement and getting a pension was invented, or mainly sort of made broadly available in Germany by Bismarck. And I always remind, and I think, and I don't want to use the wrong, but I think it was 60 something, yeah, in a time when the average whatever was 65. So what it was meant to back then, that they said, look, if you worked, by the way, and if you worked in physical labor, which was time back then, if you work in physical labor really till 60 or something, we're gonna give you some years of paid money from the government. But it was some years, and then unfortunately people were dying because it was the life expectancy of the time. So, and we kept more or less that age the same, 60 something, and at the same time we achieved a healthy life extending to like 85. So it doesn't make any sense, by the way, financially not. This is why sort of this whole sort of pension system, especially in Germany, whatever, where we have not the it's not money backed, but like the state guarantees it, whatever, is insane. Because like, yeah, and it's also, but it's also insane and not positive from a human perspective, because you don't want to sit around for 30 years and feeling like useless. Yeah. So again, the concept was like, if you've done hard labor, and there might be people who really like at 65 are like so sort of worked down that they at least don't want to do physical stuff, but hey, they could do other stuff. So both from a financial perspective, because governments already today, not talking about what will come, cannot pay it, but also from a positive human perspective to say, let's include these people more. We need to rethink. I'm a big fan of that idea. Yeah, the whole concept of retirement. Yeah. So having said that, and then you have the second sort of boost, which will come, or we are already in it, is that sort of scientists started to accept, which is one of my sort of biggest mantras, is aging is a disease. It's not God given. It's not necessary. I think what happened is, like, if you look at human history again, because it happened to everybody over the last 100,000 years, it's maybe the biggest sort of belief we have beyond religions is that aging is natural. Yeah. But by the way, we also believe that the plague is a punishment of God. Which, by the way, that belief that the plague is a punishment of God actually prevented societies of finding solutions. Because if it is a punishment from God, you just accept it, you don't do anything. And if you, again, sorry, like always making historical analogies, but if you go again back in history, there were actually people during the time of the plagues, yeah, who said, oh, maybe it has something to do with hygiene, maybe it has something to do with the rats. Yeah. These people were actually punished because they were saying, they were sort of ignoring from the, or they were like, yeah, they were like, people were saying, oh, you sort of, you ignore that this is God given, you shouldn't say that, it's blasphemy, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So, and I have the same feeling again with aging. If you say, it's getting better, but if you said over the last 3-4 years, oh, aging is a disease, and because it's a disease, we can cure it, people were almost saying in a modern way, that's blasphemy, because we all know aging is God-given, aging is natural. Yeah. So, but the good thing is we start, because you need to, the first step for any solution is to accept the problem. Yeah. So, and we're starting accepting the problem. So science actually has changed, and it becomes sort of a common theme or a common acknowledgement that aging is a disease. It's a very complex one. There won't be a wonder pill, whatever, but we start to understanding what aging is, why it's happening. And in a moment that I deeply believe it's in anything, humans have a great track record once we start understanding things, yeah, and defining it as a problem, yeah, we actually start solving it. So having said that, I believe that over, again, sort of the next 20 years roundabout, we will gradually push life expectancy. People are always like, oh, do you believe that that we wake up one day and we're going to be 150? No. Yeah. But over the next 20 years and then going on, we're going to gradually extend life expectancy. So we should go via over 100 soon. Yeah. And then push it further. And then somewhere you will have these famous moment or year where sort of we win more life expectancy per 1 year than we lose. So and this is sort of this inflection point where then technically everything is possible, because if you win more than a year per year, you can go on technically with that for a very long time. Yeah. So, and on that way, we have the problem which we just described with retirement, that we need to find new purpose for people, even in sort of older ages, which is then not even old. Yeah. Yeah. Will become more and more pressing, because like we cannot have retirement at 60 something when we live till 100. Yeah. And by the way, in a very healthy state, I have to say that as well, because a lot of people who hear that for the first time, that we're going to push life expectancy, they are instinctively saying, oh, but I know I have a 90-year-old grandmother, she's really miserable. Do you think you're just going to extend that miserable state of life for like 10 more years? And that's not, like, there won't be any meaningful life extension without making sort of aging slower, even reverse it. And sort of, this is why we so much focused on healthy aging. So keep you in a healthy, sort of useful state. Yeah. So, and then we come back, sorry, last point, to psychedelics, because the one thing is your body able to do new things? And that will be like a 60-year-old, a 70 and 80-year-old will be like a 40, 50-year-old today. But then the second question is, will your mind be able and willing? Yeah. So I do think most people are willing to do, but like Yeah, it's my example. Like if you take a bus driver, take a 50-year-old bus driver today, in his career, yeah, we will see self-driving buses. Full stop. In the next 10 years, we're gonna see self-driving buses. So somewhen this bus driver will need to find a new job. And by the way, bigger picture, coming to what I said before, fear whatever, that bus driver might not know what AI and what everything else is, but he has a good feeling that his job's not going to be there anymore in the next 10 years. Yeah. So we need now to give that bus driver the opportunity that they can do a new job. Yeah. And again, the one is the willingness, but I think more people, I'm very optimistic, in generally want to be part of society and want to contribute. But then it's not so easy to say, yeah, well, then go back to university or to school and learn a new job, because our brain has aged. Yeah. Not like the sort of neurodegenerative way that, hope, thanks God, A comes later, and we also will be able to combat that. But like one of my other important points in relation to psychedelics is sort of the aging of the brain, which starts way earlier, around 30, where you're losing creativity, where you're losing openness towards the world. Yeah, everything we associate with young people, sort of that the world is my oyster thinking, I can do everything. Blah, blah. So, and I think psychedelics to a certain extent have the potential to give this back to older people. And that is important because that will make them able to go back to university, go back to school, and really learn and reinvent themselves in a very positive way.
I think that's really super insightful, and I think also the piece I've picked up on there, which is just really does complement and substitute, is the word retirement, because I'm a big fan of language. You know, language can be, you know, quite finite. People know me for my metaphors. I'm heavily into expressing terms with metaphors. But if I look at my journey over the last 3 years, particularly working with executives in this sort of like bubble of retirement who are not prepared to go into it and are looking to, there's two words they're looking for, is a sense of completion and a sense of fulfillment. And it's almost like they've got to a state now where it's another realm of their consciousness and wisdom kicking in to sort of give them that life longevity and that reflection point. Then if you then combine that with less is more, meaning they don't want to work full time, they want to put part time, but they want to put an emphasis on how they recuperate, rejuvenate. I call it leisureization. It's a word that, you know, doesn't really mean a great deal, other than a lot of people now are reflecting quite deeply. You know, we've seen the sort of the meditation boom, you know, that's out there right now. You know, you go back sort of 5, 10 years ago. I mean, it's been around for eons, obviously, but now it's pardon the language, for many it's common practice. People are now starting to reach out and sort of access their spirituality. They're starting to gain inspiration from nature, and, you know, all of these sort of real deep human connections are coming in, which does support this whole combination, this whole movement of new human senses of expression. I was listening to something this morning actually, which was all about sensations. It's about how we're starting to feel our way through things and open up our senses to new experiences, which is quite interesting.
Yeah.
And, you know, just I know I keep pointing back to the psychedelics piece, but, you know, it's all there, is that it's in the heart of it all. You know, it's to sort of rediscover that sort of what is laid in your subconscious waiting to come out. The gold lies within, you know, that real deep sort of, I didn't know this was in me, you know, which also comes back to the bus driver that says, you know, I have a lot to give. Okay, how do I give it? You know, which is fantastic. And then you combine that with you know, then the nutrition, which I know is a big. There's a lot of supplementation now in longevity, which I follow quite a lot. There's certain sort of areas of supplementation and nutrition that are all around, you know, not kind of anything other than cell recuperation, cell regeneration.
What I would say, like on the nutrition side, it's the two things. Like, A, because I don't want to promise or make people wrong hopes, but I want to make the right hopes. Like, sort of, there is nothing at the moment which you can take or do so that you live to 100 or safely at least, or say a high probability. Like so, but as I said, I deeply believe that companies like my company Rejuveron, where we really like what we're doing with Rejuveron is like we're really developing medical drugs which have the potential to slow down, reverse aging. Because again, aging is a disease; it will be curable. You're gonna need multiple drugs because it's a complex disease there. So, but these successes, and Rejuveron is luckily, or I'm proud, one of the leading companies in the world, but there are more working on it. Yeah, I started another company in the US called Cambrian. Yeah, actually, because like when I looked at it some years ago, the reason to start these two companies was indeed that people started sort of accepting that aging is a disease, but there was no company out there which really did it properly on the real drug development side. So really so. And in Germany, we have the saying, if you want to get something done properly, do it yourself. So I was like, hey, I don't want to age, I do it myself. But having said that, these drugs, these medical interventions, which Rejuveron and Cambrian are developing, they will come over the next, again, 10, 20 years. Rejuveron will have some early successes. They're already like in clinical trials, but let's say 5 to 10 years, 5 to 15 years, whatever. So, but then the real stuff is coming. So, and what all the supplements can do, and healthy living, and sort of the whole concept of it, is that they increase the probability that you're still there when the real stuff is happening. Yeah. So because if you look at your age, like 55, let's say, yeah, sort of statistically you would say, hey, I have a life expectancy of 85, so check, which is by the way good, yeah. But unfortunately, we also all know that that sort of this is like this bell-shaped curve, and and sort of your risk, unfortunately, with 40, 50 starts going up. That you're one of the sort of outliers to the negative, yeah. And mainly, by the way, that is a cardiovascular disease or cancer. So I would say if you don't have or get cancer or a cardiovascular disease over the next 10 years, yeah, 15 years, the probability that you're still around healthy is pretty high. Yeah. So if I look at my nutrition plan, all of my nutrition plan is focused on not getting cardiovascular disease and cancer. So, and there you can do a lot, preventative, whatever, to just skew the probability of a good outcome in your favor so that you're still alive when the real stuff is coming. Or say it in a different way, yeah, sort of, and it sounds funny, you're like dying over the next 10, 15 years is the most stupid time to die. Yeah, because now we almost there that the real stuff is coming. Yeah, so and you want to still be there when the real stuff is coming. So, and then meaning that is all, by the way, meaning we can, but like I think, by the way, the main thing that is the main thing is happiness. People underestimate the positive effect happiness has on everything in your body. Yeah. So you have a child, great. Yeah. Just don't forget, I tell that every new parent, like, yeah, sleep is also important. That's the downside of a baby, at least. Like, so you need to manage it somehow. Yeah. But like, if I go through my sort of top 5, whatever, like happiness, most important, sleep is super important. If you don't sleep enough, yeah, forget about everything else because you're ruining so much. Yeah. By the way, we're the only species out there who deliberately cuts down on the most important sort of repair mechanism of your body. If you think it, like, it's completely insane that we're waking up with an alarm clock, whatever. That is actually one of the big luxury things I'm trying to have. That, yeah, I'm not doing early morning meetings. That doesn't mean because I'm sleeping always till 10, but that does mean that in my first 2 hours, 3 hours, I can do emails, I can do calls, spontaneous ones. But like but I give my body the time to wake up when the body feels I had enough sleep. Yeah. So that really changed my life. Also in terms of efficiency, like, yeah, productiveness enormously. Like I can just, whoever has the luxury, because I know some people have to show up and work at a certain time, but like whoever can somehow do that, I think that's one of the biggest life-changing things you can do. So yeah, happiness, sleep, no alcohol, yeah, no other drugs, no unhealthy drugs, which is practically everything else than psychedelics, yeah. Um, and then you can go, these are the big, mild exercise. Actually, you don't need to be like a super athlete, but like do 3, 4 times a week, like a little bit of gym, a little bit of cardio, just be active. Stretching is super important. Like people underestimate that, especially when you go older. Yeah. And then you can go into the supplement stuff. Like I think one of the the most healthy things is metformin, as a like a real drug, vitamin D, like very. I always say it, like, and I know I get always then emails like, yeah, after every podcast, and I need to do it really. Like I always say, like I'm gonna, because I have an 11 pager for myself and for friends what I'm
Yeah.
doing. Like, yeah, then also going into the details. Yeah. I should publish it, but like I always say, like it's a little bit like 80-20 or almost 19-10 rule. If you do the big five, like sleep, exercise, happiness, proper nutrition overall, no sugar, yeah, no alcohol, stuff like that, then you already made 80% of it. And then because people always want to know the quick hack, like, oh, which supplements are you taking? And yes, I take like 30-40 supplements a day, but that is the final 10-20%. If you don't do the first 80%, you don't need to go there. Yeah, so get the big stuff right.
I think that's great advice, and some of our listeners will obviously be jumping into this. I think this whole conversation that you and I have had on, psychedelics, the next generation of humanity, that sort of real infinite look of how we're all going to, transition, and the health and wellness element is obviously pivotal. I call it, I mean, personally, I've sort of rituals and routines, very sort of Zen in that department about how you kind of apply what I call the brilliant basics within yourself of how you sort of really look after the body. And it comes back to sort of energy. And, I say to myself, it's an interesting question, this about, age and all that sort of thing. My question now is, how young are you? Not how old are you? So it starts with that mindset. And the other thing that I've actually thought about is, so in the end, Paul, what will you stand for? In the sense of, if AI has took over the world, and, there's a generation that's kind of, kind of at odds with itself. Candidly, I think inspiration. At the end of the day, we have to reach out for inspiration. Is being able to, as you are, incredibly well practiced in what you're doing, your rituals and routines, is inspirational. That actually builds a following. I want to live like that. I want to practice, that word practicing life. Yeah. People sometimes, in my view, and I know I don't want to take up too much more of your time, Christian, today, but equally, I think we've got to sort of create space, stand back, and rethink how we're administering ourselves. And I think the platform of businesses that you have, the investments and the structures you're putting in place, the kind of liberation that you're bringing to the masses, is a tonic. And that word hasn't to be taken lightly. You're bringing a tonic to the wider world with your messages, that it can be done a different way. And that's what I've picked up. I'm only echoing what I've picked up. I'm not trying to boost any ego here or anything like it.
Oh,
But
Silent Ego podcast. Yeah, exactly.
Silent Ego is the podcast, right? Soul of the entrepreneur. Listen to the soul. And actually, there's a strap line under there which called Life Beyond the Spreadsheet, right? Which, it's not all about money, okay? Money's important, but it's a close second with where we're going. And that has to be sort of considered, which comes back to this happiness. And I'm doing a few videos in a few weeks' time on the cost of money, not literally the cost of money and the relationship that we have with it, and how it can take us hostage and actually really negate all of these human things that we've talked about, and go within to sort of reach the gold, because it sits there, not there, which hopefully aligns with your vision.
Yeah. By the way, it's just saying the cost or the how you value that. Like there was a fun survey I saw on Twitter, but a lot of people actually participated. Somebody was asking like, would you rather be 80 years old and have like 100 million, or rather 20 years old and being broke? Yeah. And by the way, obviously, I would say most people said like, I want to be 20, yeah, and broke. Yeah. So which shows you how much we value actually health and life. So which then, if you go back to the business side, even like tells you how big Rejuveron can become. Yeah. Because like if we find just a drug which prolongs life for 2-3 years in a healthy state, yeah, this is gonna be the best-selling drug of all times, because ultimately, when we're sort of getting to the point, yeah, people would most likely give their entire fortune for just some more years.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think that it's interesting when you position it like that and you use that statistic. It really does sort of, it really does endorse the life force and humankind. Christian, we're coming to the end of our time together on this, what I would call moment in time. And hopefully we'll reflect back on this in some years to come about what we were talking about in relation to what we individually and collectively contributed to, the next chapter of humanity. But I want to really say that this has been fantastic for me. It's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you on this podcast. I would classify you, your businesses, and your associations as the font of knowledge for the future of humanity. As I said, I'm quite cool with my metaphors, but hopefully, and I genuinely mean this. You're one of the most refreshing people I've ever met. And I wish you absolutely everything. And hopefully one day we'll physically meet and really fuse that energy. And yeah, we're out there. But I wanted to say thank you for your time and just the best for this week. I know you've got a big schedule and you're kicking off on Psych this week. So I wish you the very, very best.
Thank you very much for the, as you said, at the beginning, super kind words, and I try to live up to it. Yeah. Thank you for having me.